Okay, and we are live now. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. My name is Monique Brown, and I am the Assistant Secretary for the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP. I would like to welcome you all to Real Talk, a conversation with Police Chiefs Amal Awad and Ed Jackson, and say thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. This event is being brought to you by the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP, the Area chapter of Jack and Jill of America, the Northern Arundel Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the Rho Eta Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, the Lambda Delta Sigma Alumni chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, and the Delta Pi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. Tonight's event is being live streamed on Facebook and will be an opportunity to get to know our new police chiefs, Amal Awad and the police chief, Ed Jackson. Amal Awad is the police chief of Anne Arundel County, and Ed Jackson is the police chief of the city of Annapolis. Our first session is called Get to Know You and will be moderated by Dr. Sean Ashworth. And our second segment will be a discussion on a police accountability reform bill that was just passed by our legislators in our 2021 session. Mr. Stephen Waddy from the NAACP will be moderating this portion of the event. We know that with the new police reform changes, our audience has a lot of questions, so we are excited that our panelists have decided to join us this evening, and we're looking forward to this conversation. Before we begin, I just wanted to briefly describe how our event will proceed this evening. For the majority of the event, everyone in our Zoom will be muted, with the exception of those people that are co-hosting. And as our moderators are asking questions, only the panelists will be unmuted. We would just like to ensure that the audience is able to hear our moderators and our panelists as they are asking questions. For the last portion of our event, we will be accepting questions from our audience. For our audience members in Facebook, if you have any questions, please feel free to place your questions in the Facebook chat. And if you are joining us via Zoom, please place your questions in our Zoom chat, and we will try to get to as many questions as soon as possible. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to our moderator for our Get to Know You segment, which is Dr. Sean Ashworth. Dr. Ashworth is the president of the Northern Arundel Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority and is also an employee of the Anne Arundel County Public School System. Dr. Ashworth has served with Anne Arundel County Public Schools in several positions, from counselor to principal, and now as a program specialist in the Office of Safe and Orderly Schools, supporting schools with creating positive school cultures, structures, and professional development for teachers in classroom management through implementation of the Kids at Hope philosophy, restorative practices, and multi-tiered supports. Although she has served in several roles and has had many titles, the title and role that she is most passionate about is her role as a treasure hunter. With passion and great intention, she searches for the skills and talents in others to help them become their best selves. Dr. Ashworth, the floor is yours.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Zoom panel and our audience out on Facebook. This evening, we have a treat for you because this evening we have two dynamic law enforcement folks who know their role and their job and have proven to do well for our community. We have Chief Amal Awad, who was appointed Chief of Police of the Anne Arundel County Police Department on December 17, 2020. She is new, but from what I hear and what I see, she's been here for a while. She is a native Washingtonian and resides in Prince George's County, Maryland, with her spouse. She began her career a while ago, back in 1990, where she served as a law enforcement officer until she retired. So I want y'all to hear this. She retired as a major in 2013, and she came back to serve. Love her already. She has also served as Deputy Chief of Police and was appointed Chief of Police in December 2018. Chief is a graduate from Johns Hopkins University, earning her Master's of Science degree in Management. She's also a graduate of the prestigious Police Executive Research Forum's Senior Manager Institute. Hello and good evening. Then we have another dynamic law enforcement officer, Chief E. Jackson, who has served with the Baltimore Police Department for 21 years. And again, he retired and he came back to serve. He has served in several capacities as an instructor at the Baltimore Police Academy, as an inspector general of the Baltimore Police. He is an assistant professor of the criminal justice at the Baltimore City Community College, and he holds a BS in criminal justice from Coppin State, an MS in behavioral sciences with a concentration in community development, and he earned his doctorate at Johns Hopkins University. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I have the privilege to talk to you all. And guess what? We're not talking about police work right now. We want to know, who are you? Who is Police Chief Amal Awad and who is Chief Ed Jackson? So I just have two questions because I need you to describe to the audience outside of your uniform, who are you? So in 3 words, and it's 1 word for each, I want you to describe your commitment to family, your profession, and to the community. 3 words, 1 each. And then I want you to talk a little bit about why have you chosen those words? And we are going to start with Police Chief Amal Awad.
Thank you very much for that introduction. I was going to recommend age before beauty, but since you asked me to go first, I will. The first descriptor that comes to mind for me is passion. I'm passionate about this profession, but I'm more so passionate about people. If I had to describe myself, an open heart, and also thoughtful, very thoughtful. I tend to put others first. That's a shortcoming, but I also view it as a strength.
Thank you for oh, go ahead, keep talking, go ahead. But you know we're on a limited time, but I love those words. Go ahead.
A little bit about me. You said, yeah, I'm a native Washingtonian. I was born in Washington, D.C., and like many families from Washington, D.C., my family did move to Prince George's County. Early on in my younger years, I grew up in a number of neighborhoods, parents divorced, and we moved around quite a bit. I grew up in neighborhoods that were considered lower socioeconomic neighborhoods, and whatever you can think of that you would see in those neighborhoods, I experienced it in my childhood years. But I had a strong mother, and that's very important. Parenting is important. Parenting is important to me. My wife and I have a 21-year-old adult woman who is expecting right now. Yes, thank you. I impart with her the very lessons my mother, imparted with us growing up. Education first, and always give your best, help others along the way. It's never about the self. And I tend to gravitate toward people who are selfless versus selfish. I prefer that in my inner circle. So when I am amongst friends, I have very few. Those are people who kind of share in the same values as I. I have a number of ladies in law enforcement who I consult with and meet with on a regular basis. I love them dearly. They're not exclusive to Anne Arundel County, but other surrounding jurisdictions. I consider that a blessing. And if I may, I apologize in advance, Chief Jackson, ma'am, Dr. Ashworth, I have a couple people on here. I just wanted to introduce my executive command staff to you all, the community. Whenever that time is appropriate, please say so, because I have 3 that are gonna go first and then they're going to sign off.
Absolutely, because if you don't, you'll hear about it tomorrow in the office. So yes, We will give you that privilege, but I'm gonna let Chief Jackson go first. Thank you so much, Chief Awad. You are just a normal person. Thank you for sharing.
Thank
Chief
you.
Jackson.
There you go. Can you hear me? Okay.
Loud and clear, sir.
Yes. What I'm gonna say about myself is very similar to my colleague, Chief Howard. But I think the three words that best describe me is passionate, committed, and determined. And passionate in terms that I believe that you have to stand for something, or the old proverb or old adage is, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. So you have to be committed. Dr. King said, he who is not that committed to something is not fit to live. And you have to be so committed you're worth dying for it. If you're not fit to live. I think that's what Dr. King said, kind of paraphrasing his words. I'm committed, not only committed to law enforcement and committed to education, but committed to my family and my friends. I love very hard. Once I love you, it's hard for me to let you go. That's men and women. I love very, very, very hard. You know, once you're my friend, you're my friend. And it's not fair weather. It's easy to be somebody's friend when they're doing everything for you and they're doing everything you would like them to do. I think a true friend accepts you for who you are unconditionally, even when it gets on your nerves and they're doing things that you don't approve of. If you have a passion and a heart for them, then you stick with them. So, and determined. I grew up in public housing to a single parent. My late mother was everything to me. She raised 5 children and didn't lose any of us to the streets. And so determined to get an education, determined to be somebody, determined to be a part of the solution as opposed to a part of the problem, and determined to leave a legacy that future generations can look to. And hopefully when my time has expired here on this earth, I will leave something that my family, my friends, and the community can look to. So those are the 3 words that describe me. Something personal about me: I love R&B. I love a good cigar. I love good food. I love to tell stories. I love, as Chief Howard can tell you, I love to laugh. I love a good sense of humor. She has a good sense of humor. We met a couple of weeks ago and laughed the whole time, basically. I'm a proud father of 2 young men. I'm a divorced father too. I have 2 sons, one 37. Actually, he'll be 38 in September, and I have another son that's 33. They both are graduates, both graduated magna cum laude from Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. So I'm extremely proud of them. I'm born and raised in Baltimore. I'm a collector and I love clothes. I have too many pairs of shoes and too many shirts and too many shoes. I don't even wear it anymore, but I still, a good shirt is hard for me to walk away from, or a nice suit. So, and I like jazz. I like live jazz. And so that's pretty much who I am, and sports.
Thank you so much for sharing. And again, you are just a regular person, but now I know why you both retired and came back. You're passionate, you go all in, it's all about the future, and you care. And those are the qualities that we need in our law enforcement folks. We need all of them to be intentional, because that's the word I use, but that's what I heard. You didn't say that word, but that's the word I use, being intentional in the work and being passionate in that attention. One more question, and hopefully my time will not run out. I have about 4 minutes. You said a lot, and I think I've learned a lot about you. You're just regular old people. You're just regular old people, and I love it. If you had to, again, what do you want our viewing audience and the people to know about you? You know, I have doctor in front of my name and people say Dr. Ashford, and I'm always going, no, I'm just Sean. I'm just Sean, because when we put titles in front of our names, people hold us on this pedestal. Sometimes we need to be held on that pedestal, but I also want to just be treated as just Sean. So just Ed and just Amal, what do you want the viewing audience and our Zoom folks to know? Just who are you just?
I'll go before just Ed. So my name is Amal Awad. To those who are just tuning in, I consider myself a humble person. Again, a people person. It's hard to talk about myself. A lot of people actually struggle with it, but we're human beings. I'm human. I struggle with a lot, just like the average person. I have great days and great moments, and I have days that suck the life out of me. But I navigate through those moments with some good orderly guidance and good friends. You know, I'm human. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm not perfect. And I do sometimes say I'm just me. You know, there are all these titles. And as you said, you know, you hold the title of doctor. For me, it's chief. Sometimes when I introduce myself to people, I'm like, my name is Amal. How are you? I hold the position, or I serve as chief of police, but I'm Amal at the end of the day. When I retire, when I walk away from this profession, I'm going to be Amal Awad. That's simple. A title is just a title. And I firmly believe that some people get caught up in titles. You have to earn that title. And, you know, in myself and Chief Jackson, you know, you'll find that every day, you know, we aspire to earn that title, but we're just us. It's that simple.
Thank you. And Chief Jackson, I got 2 minutes and I need to wrap up. So who are you? What do you want our audience to leave here knowing you're just a who?
And I really say ditto to Amal. A lot of it, what she said, are my sentiments exactly. But I want them to leave with the notion that I care, that I have a social consciousness. At the end of the day, no matter how many titles you give me, I wasn't born with chief. My birth certificate doesn't say chief, and I don't think my death certificate will say chief. I won't be around to read it, but I don't think it'll say chief. It'll say Edward Jackson. You know, that's the name that my parents gave me. And so at the end of the day, I'm hoping that for the very reasons that you mentioned, Dr. Ashworth, that we're just regular people. You know, I have a social consciousness. I don't apologize for my ethnicity. I don't apologize for my heroes. I'm not ashamed to say that I'm a big fan of Malcolm X. I'm not ashamed to say I love the eloquence of Dr. King. I'm not ashamed to say that Jackie Robinson is one of my baseball heroes. And so I'm not ashamed of any of that. My culture is what I'm trying to say.
Yes,
I love
sir.
all people are important, you know, and all people deserve human dignity. But at the end of the day, I'm just Ed Jackson, you know. To hang out with me, you'd be surprised. Unless I told you I was a police chief, and you put on this veil and not see the badge or all and I didn't mention that. You would never know I'm a police chief. You would think I'm a fun-loving, middle-aged guy that's kind of out there and love to see you laugh and have fun. So that's who I am.
Well, thank you so much.
About the reforms that need to take place in our community. But thank you.
Absolutely. And it has been my pleasure getting to know you and introducing you to our community. Before we go, Chief Amal, please introduce your staff.
Yes, ma'am. And by the way, love the shirt.
I'm gonna give a shout out now. You know, I told the students I had to represent the coalition. I was joining them today and they made me an honorary member. And so I know I'm gonna learn how to lead, grow, and we're gonna do all this together, right? So go ahead, Chief Amal. I don't want to take it over. Go ahead.
Good. So joining me tonight, I have 2 deputy chiefs that oversee 2 respective bureaus, 4 bureaus, but they oversee 2 each. We have Deputy Chief Gerard Flemings on. He oversees, well, Gerard Flemings, why don't you introduce yourself to the room and tell them exactly what you do? How about that?
All right, ma'am. Good evening, everyone. I'm Deputy Chief Gerard Flemings. I have the Patrol Bureau, which is all the officers you see on the street every day, including the SROs. And I also have the Community Relations Bureau, which, Community Services Bureau, which Chief Amal just created. Been here in Anne Arundel County just about 32 years, Deputy Chief almost 6 years. And I guess that's about it. I'll keep it short and let everybody else go.
Thank you, Deputy Chief Flemings. And next we have Deputy Chief William Lowry. Please, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for allowing me to be here. First of all, if I could bottle Dr. Sean's enthusiasm and put it in a bottle, I think I could be a billionaire. I've never seen anybody as enthusiastic as my life. So congratulations, doctor. So again, my name is Bill Lowry. I'm the other deputy chief. I'm in charge of the Bureau of Administration and also the Bureau of Operations and Investigations. That's all the criminal investigations in our Special Operations Division. I started my law enforcement career back September the 4th, 1973. So I'm the senior citizen of the group. I actually retired in 2000, came back into policing in 2013. It's an honor and privilege to be here with this organization. I think it's the finest police department in the nation. I know Chief Jackson may disagree with me on that one. And just a little bit about me. I've been married 48 years. I've got 3 boys, all of them in their 40s, 6 grandchildren. I'm an elder in my church. I love this profession. I think I've got a servant leadership kind of an attitude, protector, and I love people. My mother and father taught me that, and my church taught me that. So thank you folks for allowing me to be here. I'll tell you this, you got a great chief in front of you here. She's outstanding.
Thank you for that, Deputy Chief Lowry, and the proof's in the pudding. I gotta show them, can't tell them. Next up, we have Major Michelle Simpson. Ma'am, are you on?
I am on.
All right, it's yours.
Good evening. I'm Major Michelle Simpson. I am currently in charge of the Bureau of Administration. However, that will change tomorrow. But as of today, I have the communications section, technology, central records, police personnel, the training academy, recruitment, forensic services. So everything on the administrative side of the house. Very important, helping get applicants to come onto the police department. Been with the police department for 31 years and hope to be here for a little while longer to help us move forward and engage with our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Simpson. I have 3 other majors on the line. They're going to remain with me throughout the course of this conversation, but I just want to do a brief introduction. We'll go first with our newest and newly promoted major who will be overseeing our Bureau of Community Services, Major Fred Plitt.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me today. I'm the newest major. I guess I've been promoted 1 week, and I'm very honored to work and to be promoted by the chief. I took over the new Bureau of Community Services that was just established. Within that bureau, I have the Community Relations Division, which there's a lot of programs. I know a lot of sections that you've heard of. The Community Relations section, school safety sections, which has our SROs, our crisis intervention team that I know is internationally known and well-renowned throughout the United States. I also have youth activities program, and it's our victim witness engagement services, which has Ms. Tamika Perkins at the helm of that deals with some of our juvenile justice programs. And I also have our new Office of Reentry and Community Engagement to help some of our citizens that have served some time. So I'm 31-year veteran in the Anne Arundel County Police Department. Just like everybody said, I think the key word is passionate. I'm passionate, I'm sincere, and I'm driven for community policing. And I appreciate it. And we'll move on to the next. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Plitt. We have also with us Major Ross Passman. Ross, are you ready?
Yes. Good evening, everybody. Major Ross Passman, entering my 30th year here with the department. I currently have the Bureau of Operations and Investigations, and tomorrow I switch with Major Simpson. Luckily, our offices are next to each other, so we can learn off of each other. But my bureau has our Special Operations Division. That includes canine officers, our helicopter unit, our quick response team, and traffic safety. And then the other side of the house is our Criminal Investigation Division. And those are the folks, the detectives that handle the most severe crimes within the county. They have many different functions within that Criminal Investigations Division, but they are the ones that are normally wearing the suits and ties that you see. Glad to be here today, and I appreciate everybody on the Zoom today.
Thank you, Major Passman. And last but not least, we'll save the best for last, right? Everyone knows she's talented and gifted, and she wows everyone she meets everywhere she goes. Major Katie Goodwin.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I've been with the department for 27 years now. Still love coming to work, still love what I do. The one word that I would use to describe me is enthusiastic. So Dr. Ashworth, I can completely relate to your personality and I can connect with you on that. I have the Bureau of Patrol, so all the officers that you see out there in uniform and supervisors, they all fall under me. So that's my niche with the department. But thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here.
And thank you for deferring the time to us. That's our executive command staff. You've met them. They're very talented and gifted. I'm very proud to return to Anne Arundel County with such an amazing team.
You want to go to Walmart or wait till tomorrow?
I'd like to go to Walmart.
Thank you so much and welcome, welcome, welcome. And again, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure of getting to know you and your staff. And so now we are going to be moving into part 2 of this evening. And I have the pleasure of introducing our moderator for the remainder of this evening, Mr. Stephen Waddy, who is a resident of Severn. He is the chair of Anne Arundel County Chapter's NAACP's Political Action, and he also serves as the chair and advisor to the NAACP's Youth Committee. Mr. Waddy has a degree from Winston-Salem State University in history and secondary education. He is a graduate of the University of Baltimore School of Law and also comes to us with a wealth of knowledge and information. Mr. Waddy, the show is yours.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Ashworth, and you did a wonderful job. I appreciate all of those questions. And I appreciate everyone for joining us this evening, our Facebook viewers, and everyone in the chat here with me in the Zoom. I did want to say my name is Stephen Waddy. I'm the moderator for tonight's discussion with Chief Amal Awad, Chief of the Anne Arundel County Police Department, and Chief Ed Jackson, Chief in Annapolis Police Department. Two chiefs have been in their positions for relatively brief periods of time, but the environment that they've come to is one with lots of peril under the pandemic that we've been experiencing. Tonight's discussion will be mostly information sharing, and if you have any questions, please place them either in the chat box here on the Zoom or in the Facebook. We have people who will be scouring the Facebook or wherever you're watching from to be able to provide us with your questions that will be answered towards the end of this discussion. And I do ask that everyone be respectful in their commentary. I know that this could be a very emotional and very anger-inducing conversation for many people. But I do want to make sure that people remain respectful in their commentary. And we'll also have a discussion about these police reform bills, and we'll provide a link in the chat to the bills so that you all will have the opportunity to read over them and see what they've been, how they're progressing, and well, basically how they passed. The bills that were passed will not become effective immediately. Just want to keep that in mind, that there are changing effective dates. There's a lot of law that needs to be reviewed, and there are a lot of policies that still need to be made because this was such a major change in our police accountability system. I also want to say that I was listening to Attorney General Merrick Garland testify before the Senate earlier today, and there are many issues regarding cybersecurity, community policing, crime and violence, which definitely deserve to be discussed. And I know the chiefs are well versed in those issues. However, tonight we'll be discussing, focusing on the police reform and the legislation that was recently passed by the Maryland State Legislature and became law over Governor Hogan's veto. The topics that we are speaking about will likely include the no-knock warrant issues, traffic stops and driving while Black, police accountability and body cameras, and school resource officers, as well as use of force. The 2021 session of the Maryland State Legislature was another historic moment for our state. The first Black woman to become Speaker of the House of Delegates, Adrienne Jones, entered her second term as the Speaker. With the state still in lockdown, the delegates and senators would all be meeting virtually through the beginning of the session and socially distanced towards the end of the session. So all of their proceedings were live streamed. It was an opportunity like none other for people to pay attention and be engaged in the crafting of legislation. They didn't have to come down to Annapolis and drive down to Annapolis in order to give their testimony. They could stay in the comfort of their homes and provide testimony, which many people did regarding these bills. Police reform was placed on the agenda of the legislature soon after the 2020 session ended. On March 13th, 2020, a date many of us remember for the beginning of the lockdown, Breonna Taylor was murdered by Miles Cosgrove, Brett Hankinson, and Jonathan Mattingly in Louisville, Kentucky, in her home, after they forcibly entered into her apartment under the guise of executing a no-knock warrant for drugs at her residence. Then on May 25th, 2020, George Floyd was murdered by former Officer Derek Chauvin in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we all know what followed, the largest mass protest in this country's history, including close to 30 protests in Anne Arundel County and Annapolis, many led by Black women. And many participating were Black women as well. The protests that also took place in some of the most virulent white supremacist strongholds in Anne Arundel County. I know I was in Pasadena with a very strong contingent. It was great to be there. And I really enjoyed being in Pasadena. In June 2020, the Maryland House Judiciary Committee took the extraordinary step of convening a special committee entitled the Work Group to Address Police Reform and Accountability in Maryland. The committee met during the summer, even taking all-day testimony virtually on August 6, 2020. Then on December 1st, 2020, they released a final report that gave many recommendations. The Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee convened a similar set of hearings to review police reform bills in September of 2020. The Senate did not release a report specifically on those bills. However, there was a concurrent Senate investigation into policy reforms that should result from the gun trace task force scandal in Baltimore City. That was a 187-page report regarding the gun trace task force and many of the various crimes that landed those officers in jail. Many of the victims of police brutality, as well as their loved ones and supporters, have advocated for repealing the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights and since its passage in 1974. The NAACP, the ACLU, and almost 70 other organizations formed a coalition during the summer to advocate for 5 major police reform changes, testifying before the summer work group and during the legislative session. Following a great deal of legislative wrangling and politicking, the state legislature was able to come up with a series of reforms to address the issue of police brutality and many of its attendant complications. There's currently legislation before the Annapolis City Council on police reform, 01221, and the county executive for Anne Arundel County is working through legislation or policies on police accountability to determine the state legislature's bills or laws, their relationship to having a civilian review board in the county. So those are some of the background to what we're talking about today. Tonight, I wanted to start with one of the longest standing concerns that the Black community in Maryland, especially Anne Arundel County and Annapolis, has had since the time that suburbs were expanding in the area and cars became popular. The issue of driving while Black and traffic stops. Driving while Black is a phenomenon many Americans in Generation Z and older came to understand following, well, Gen X, really, not Gen Z, Gen X. Oh, sorry, I'm on that one. Came to understand following the beating of Rodney King on March 3rd, 1991, over 30 years ago. Traffic stops are the most common form of police-citizen interaction, but for many citizens, they are the most dangerous. The state legislature added a provision in the police reform legislation that clarified that at the commencement, of a traffic stop, police officers shall display proper identification to the stopped individual, providing their name, badge number, agency, and the reason for the traffic stop. In addition, they clarified that a police officer may not prohibit or prevent a citizen from recording the police officer's actions if the citizen is otherwise acting lawfully. I wanted to ask Chief Awad, what is the level of importance of traffic stops in Anne Arundel County's law enforcement strategy?
So traffic safety, traffic enforcement is a good portion of what we do in Anne Arundel County in terms of providing service to the community. We're responsible for traffic safety. When we look at the number of fatalities we have on the roadway each year, it's our responsibility to ensure that drivers are operating their vehicles properly. We encourage our officers to police constitutionally, ethically. We also have conversations, very direct conversations with them, not only in the training academy, but we visit roll calls, lineups, and have conversations with our officers about ensuring that they police from their hearts, that they treat people with dignity and respect. And we let them know that that's what we expect from our police officers. So it's very much a part of what we do. When we look at the crime picture in Anne Arundel County, considering our bordering jurisdictions, we're in a very good position. While most jurisdictions are escalating in terms of violent crime and property crimes, we're experiencing reductions, unprecedented reductions. From last year, we're down in violent crime 32%. Property crimes are down more than 20%, but it's because of the enforcement efforts of our police officers, that we're able to actually appreciate and experience those reductions. I'm looking at homicides, I'm looking at guns, I'm looking at the guns we're recovering from traffic stops. Our officers know that, we expect them to enforce the law. And there have been a substantial number of firearms that have been recovered from vehicles. And if folks aren't aware, there are devices known as ghost guns. They're fully operational firearms that are purchased in parts over the internet or however they acquire them. They're not serial numbers assigned to these parts. People assemble them. And they're carrying these illicit firearms and using them in crimes of violence in our communities. So our focus is, policing from our hearts, treating people with dignity and respect, but ensuring that our roadways are safe and we're recovering guns. I look at the homicide picture within Anne Arundel County year to date this year, we're at 10 homicides. And I look at places like our surrounding jurisdictions to the north and the south of us. And you've got in excess of 100 homicides up north and 80, 70 and above, south to us. And that crime displaces, it doesn't stop at the line, it does enter our county. And it's on us to make sure that we safeguard our community and make sure that our residents enjoy, the ability to travel freely throughout this county and enjoy themselves.
Thank you so much. Let me get Chief Jackson as well. If you could unmute real quick. Thank you. Thank you, Chief. And I was looking to identify where in your strategy of law enforcement do you find traffic enforcement and taking into consideration this driving while Black issue that we've been dealing with for a long time, which has kind of expanded for a lot of people into walking while Black and selling lemonade while Black and things like that. So just wondering whether or not you have had that. I understand that you come to this with a very sociological perspective, and I did want to hear where come from in terms of traffic enforcement and where you see it in Annapolis.
Yes, what I'm doing is shifting the paradigm, and I'm glad you brought that up, Mr. Wadi. I think the difference between me, I was a colonel, which is the third highest rank in Baltimore 20 years ago, when at my retirement 20 years ago in 2000. I think the difference between Ed Jackson 20 years ago was a senior level executive, and Ed Jackson today is the 14 years I spent teaching sociology and criminal justice at the community college level. And the reason why I even bring that up is because not only did I learn from in preparation to deliver quality education to my students, I learned from my students. And the one thing that I've brought to Annapolis now, at my confirmation here, and I said, you're getting an inspector general, you're getting a career policeman, and you're getting an educator all rolled up in one. If you look at the tapes of my confirmation hearing. And one of the first things I've done is to do two things. First of all, we have to demystify what we do and why we do it to the community. That's the first sociological approach. The second sociological approach is that you'd be amazed. I went to lineups and training. I speak at all my training personally. I have one block, that's the chief's time, where I demand to have as much time as I need to get the message across to the young men and women who come into service. First of all, they're here in the spirit of service, not adventure. The second thing is that I told them, teaching the history of being African, of African descent in America. The third thing that I made clear to my commanders, and not all of them get it. And I'm not sitting here today, we talk about being honest and real. Not all of them get it. I'm still breaking that horse, if you will, that horse, if you will, to get some of these supervisors to understand that an officer's worth to the community and the city of Annapolis is not based on the amount of statistics that they bring into the station house. I think the worst thing that's happened in law enforcement in the last 50 years of the 20th century is that we as a profession, not just Baltimore City Police or Anne Arundel County Police or the Annapolis Police, PG County, you name the agency, all of them did the same thing. We got these young college graduates to convince police executives that if you can't measure things in terms of numbers, then you have no way to gauge your effectiveness. The unintended consequences is that we fed into the stereotypes that African-American men in particular were responsible for crime in America. We know that's one of the biggest fallacies, short of, it's as big a fallacy that is, you might as well say that you equate it to Santa Claus and Christmas. One has nothing to do with the other. You see what I'm saying? So for years, and we don't talk about this enough, we have brainwashed and institutionalized law enforcement officers to believe that in order to target crime, you have to target these so-called people who are responsible for it, and it's African-American men. And so just like Chief Awad, we have to get guns off the street. You know, it protects everybody. We do operate under the rule of law, but the car stops have to be constitutional. The one thing that we have going for us right now is we're one of the early agencies in the state of Maryland to get body-worn cameras. So we've had body-worn cameras for a few years now, and it captures everything that the officers do. They are subject to severe discipline if they don't have their body-worn cameras activated to record the events. Not only that, we have a very friendly, user-friendly system to have residents, and this is before George Floyd's untimely death last year. We've had that in place before that, a very user-friendly system whereby residents can come in and file complaints. But the one thing that I do from an educational standpoint, we sit down with the citizens. A lot of times they don't have a complaint, Mr. Wadley. Everything was done in compliance with the Constitution and policy. The problem is that a lot of times people don't understand. And so we sit them down, we tell them why, and then we give them a recourse. If you don't want to take, if you don't accept what I offer you, then we will provide the NAACP or any other social, civic, or government agency with our statistics, who we stop and why we stop. But I'm not going to sit here and pretend to say that every Annapolis police officer subscribes to what I bring to the table. What's going to happen through attrition as we force people who no longer get on board with the new paradigm, they leave. And then eventually, I hope that I'll stay around long enough to witness a department that subscribes to the sociological approach, but we have to teach them. We have to teach white officers about
Hold on one
culture.
second. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did have, we got running short on time. I did want to make sure that we address some of these other questions that I had.
I'm sorry.
Just shortly, sorry, just briefly. I wanted to know whether or not you've seen the discussion around kind of deprioritizing some of the low-level offenses. There was also a case that just came out in Maryland in one of the appeals courts regarding being able to pull somebody over for the smell of marijuana. And I wanted to know whether or not this was I mean, clearly it affects African Americans, especially young Black men, at a much greater rate. And I want to know whether or not there are policies that you all have incorporated in your traffic enforcement that would, deprioritize some of these low-level offenses. That I mean, I see all these marijuana. Almost every other shopping center got a marijuana dispensary. So I'm trying to, understand, where we are in terms of making sure that people aren't being pulled over for things that are legal, and especially when you see other people not being pulled over for them.
Yeah, it's situational, and but I'll say this real quick so I can give my colleague an opportunity to respond. I'll say this real quick, and I say this when I speak publicly. I'm very, very careful to say what we're not going to enforce and what we will enforce. I just want the enforcement to be fair and done equitably, because we operate under the rule of law. I mean, I looked at your background. You have a law degree, and you understand that we have the Constitution, which is the highest form of law in America, and then we have a law enacted by the legislature. My role is that of a law enforcement officer. It's my role to enforce the law. It's the legislature's role to change laws, just like they did with police reform. And so I'm very careful. I'm very careful what I tell my officers. I'll never discourage my officers from enforcing the law. What I will discourage them from doing is engaging in selective enforcement or targeted enforcement to one group or another group. As long as I can evaluate an officer and he or she is enforcing the law equitably, then I don't get into that part of it. The sociological part of it, I just want to make sure that it's fair.
If you see an officer that's assigned to a beat that's like 20% African American, and the stops show that they're stopping somebody at 80, stopping African Americans at 80%. You just brought up the data of it. What's your intervention process?
Yeah, we bring the officer in, we look at the officer, we try to do as much as we can pre-employment, and then I think the gap is that we don't monitor enough. We're changing that now. We're looking at officer statistics. We're looking at who they pull over, and we can gauge all of that now. If some red flag jumps us out at us, and we see that certain groups are being stopped disproportionately than others, then we address that. We have an early warning system that we address. It could be training, or if we find things that are so nefarious that it's clearly a disciplinary issue, then we take the appropriate action.
Okay, thank you. Chief Awad.
And so, so we're in the process of launching a dashboard that will display on our website all of the data related to, traffic stops. Looking at our numbers, we know that it doesn't appear that a disproportionate number of African Americans are stopped, but there is a higher than the representation within Anne Arundel County. And so I'm in conversation with one of the professors at the University of Maryland to help us look at the data, analyze it, and output it, use that data to help us better, not necessarily train officers, because I do believe that our training is state of the art when we look at the type of training that we do offer. And I'll just quickly insert that we share very contemporary training with one of 3 agencies who've actually taken our officers on a guided tour and discussion at the National African American Museum of History and Culture. The tour is specific to public safety, to walk through the transatlantic slave trade through American policing into the 21st century, because we want to give our officers an opportunity to see what slavery looked like, what American policing has looked like throughout history, and what we can do as police officers as service to the community to empathize and understand why there may be angst within our community regarding public safety policing specifically.
I understand. In your early intervention process for an officer that maybe you feel like is, or that you statistics, I guess, are showing that they're being racially discriminatory or, discriminatory in other manners, engaging in bias-based policing?
So one of the things we do, and again, we do it very well. I've been to our training academy. I've seen the curriculum. I've gone to the academy, talked to recruits personally, is just very robust training. And we're looking this year for next year's in-service to expand our implicit bias training, but we're bringing in academics
I see what you're saying.
have these conversations, but the supervisors are also monitoring. Every morning at 9 a.m., we have a command staff meeting. We go through the crime from the previous 24 hours. And if anything pops up that should come to our attention, if you will, a red flag, we're made aware of, and we take immediate corrective action, whether that's through discipline, training, or re-education.
Right. I think that was one of the major concerns in regards to this use of force. And we also wanted to hear in terms of the use of force early intervention. I'm just going to skip all my introduction in regards to use of force, and because the law did change, and I did want people to know the law before we get engaged in kind of a discussion. So, I just want to go over real briefly. According to the fiscal note of the law, each police officer must sign an affirmative written sanctity of life pledge to respect every human life and act with compassion toward others. A police officer may not use force against a person unless, under the totality of circumstances, the force is necessary and proportional to one, prevent an imminent threat of physical injury to a person, or two, to effectuate a legitimate law enforcement objective. A police officer must cease the use of force as soon as one, the person on whom the force is used is under the police officer's control or no longer possesses an imminent threat of physical injury or death to the police officer or to another person, or two, to the police officer determines that force will no longer accomplish a legitimate law enforcement objective. The Act also specifies duties for a police officer, a police supervisor, and a law enforcement agency relating to the use of force. Have you all had the opportunity to craft policies or general orders regarding the new law, or are you still developing it, Chief?
Still developing, not yet. It's first of all, we're talking about what's reasonable, necessary, or proportional. That we still need more clarity or guidance from not only the legislature, but the Maryland Police Training Commission has been tasked with implementing a lot of these changes. And we're in conversation with them right now. In fact, I have a training next week. It's being hosted by the Maryland Chiefs Association to go through all of these legislative matters and really delve into how we're going to implement these new changes, not as individual agencies, but statewide, so that there's consistency throughout each of the respective jurisdictions with regard to a use of force policy. I know that Maryland Police Training and Standards Commission is going to be at that pretty much at the head of providing that framework so that we're all operating under the same policy. So this stuff has to be in effect by July 1, 2022. So we have a little bit of time. So we're already meeting to have these conversations amongst one another, and then looking at what the next steps will be for us. But, I've been having these conversations with our rank and file visiting lineups. Here are the changes we're still delving into and trying to process all. It's a lot right now that's been thrust at us, right?
I'm with you.
We intend, but I say to them, and they are, they're receptive. We intend to comply with the law. The law will change. We intend to comply.
Right.
So we'll make it happen. It's just, how we implement, and that's going to take some time.
Well, thank you. Go ahead, Chief Jackson.
I wouldn't have much more to add to what Chief Awad has already articulated. I will say this, though, real quickly, is that when you look at the states, the legislation in the state, our policy already mirrors that anyway.
Yeah.
The
The change is from reasonable to necessary and proportional, pretty much.
Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, so it's very similar anyway. And like I said, this is more of a commentary that it's not legislation that changes the culture. That only holds them accountable. That's reactive. It's leadership. The right person at the helm, the right supervision, the right culture. But I think that Chief Awad said it very eloquently. So I won't have what that.
I appreciate that. Do you all feel like we needed a statewide use of force policy?
I don't know that we needed a statewide use of force policy in the sense that most larger agencies, I'm sorry to say this, but in some of the municipalities, quite frankly, because I'm familiar with the ones on the Prince George's County side, we're already adhering to many of the recommendations.
Right.
I'm a member of the Police Executive Research Forum Senior Management Institute, a graduate, and they put out a use of force guide for us many, many years ago. And so too did Maryland Police Training Commission. And so many of the things that were recommended in that in the legislation have already been implemented. And we state in our policies right now today, prior to even changing them, that the sanctity of life is a cornerstone of public safety. We want to go home. We all want to go home.
Right.
That's right. And I think the biggest thing that hasn't been said, I think that and I'm a graduate of the same institution, and as a college professor, I taught at the Maryland Police Correction Training Commission, and I get the standards now, the new title. And what the state legislation does, it just strengthens it. It shows the public that our elected officials are committed to making sure that we have a unilateral policy, if you will, to ensure that the citizens are going to get fair, unbiased, and impartial policing. But to be honest with you and to be frank, many of the recommendations that the Maryland General Assembly's made, many agencies have already done it. It just gives it a little more teeth when you can say it comes from our Maryland legislature.
Are county officers taught to use neck restraints?
We're not taught to use neck restraints. In fact, when you look at our policy, and it says that chokeholds are prohibited. A neck restraint is not a chokehold. So we prohibit our officers from using any type of tactic that would prohibit breathing, okay? So, but there may be a time where an officer may grab a hold of someone to control their movement in a sense. And it's not necessarily applying pressure to either side or the front of the neck where we're restricting air.
And what about Annapolis? Thank you. In Annapolis, are chokeholds banned as well?
Yes, we don't have a policy for chokeholds per se, but again, just like the state legislation, we look at the totality of the evidence.
Right.
If the officer, if an officer saves a life doing it, or save their own life, or if it's an alternative to having to use deadly force, then we have to take that into consideration. But to answer your question more directly, no, sir, we don't use that as the first line of defense, nor do we endorse it.
Is a chokehold deadly force?
It can be.
It can be, yes, sir.
It depends on the situation, and that is the exception. That's the only time where a chokehold is authorized, is if it's a situation where deadly force would be warranted.
And now we have this totality of the circumstances, and not a reasonable officer, which is what the Supreme Court standard is what a reasonable officer would have considered. And it's been that standard since 1989, which is where we see many of these issues, and why it needed to be changed, I guess, statewide in the perception of the state legislature. And I also wanted to mention that according to a 2020 article in the Capital Gazette, I just want to quote, there's the police chief stated, if an officer uses deadly force, this is from Anne Arundel County Police, I'm sorry, not the police chief. It was, if an officer uses deadly force, the incident is reviewed by the Deadly Force Review Board, and a member of the Anne Arundel County Equal Employment Office, EEO office, serves as the outside voice of the review. Is that still the policy?
So I'll defer to Major Passman on the departmental policy. He pretty much is tasked with crafting our policy. I'm going to say a yes, that there is a review board that is still in place, but he can articulate that because again,
briefly, please.
Yes, we call it the Serious Incident Review Board. We just changed the name, and yes, we have a civilian member that the chief picks and also a member of the EEOC.
Because we lost our EEO officer. Unfortunately, she left us, and she was a great EEO officer, Miss Alana Dennis, and hopefully we'll be able to. I mean, she's irreplaceable. She did not pass. I'm not trying to say that, but she's retired, and so you all know how that is in retirement, and you get to enjoy yourself. So I did want to ask, where are we going? It's 8 o'clock. We got a couple minutes left. I'm gonna go up to the body-worn camera policy. Can you describe a little bit, Chief Awad, your body-worn camera policy and how it's going? I see you've brought the person in charge, and I definitely appreciate all of the forums that you've held in regards to the body-worn camera policy. Hopefully we can get some, have the dash cam policy as well, but definitely want to see that. Go ahead.
So I'm going to defer again to Major Passman. I rely on my subject matter experts. He drafted the policy based on state policy through MPCTC, obviously, and benchmarked various agencies for best practices. So Major Passman, could you give us a brief overview of our body-worn camera policy?
Yeah, so that is true. We followed all the tenets of the Maryland Police Training Commission that they laid out. And we looked at policies throughout the state of agencies that already have been using body-worn cameras, including the Annapolis City Police. Thank you. And we took all those best practices to put into our policy. We feel at this point we have I'll say the latest and greatest technology that's out there, because I think we're the newest that have purchased it. So the policy is now posted on our website. And it's been posted along with citizen commentary, but the final policy is now out, and we get to start training next week for our train the trainers, and we will have our first cameras sent out in July, and for the next 3 months after that. By September, we'll have everybody in the department, all sworn members, with a body-worn camera.
And Mr. Wadi, just very briefly, for everyone's knowledge, all of our policies are posted on our website. You can go to our website to find our policies if you choose to read through them.
Thank you. Chief Jackson, in your experience, how have body-worn cameras assisted in the identification of officers that you want to add to the early detection system, or assisted in determining that the complaint was wrong?
Yes, it's been a tremendous help. I think that I just said this yesterday at a community meeting. Body-worn cameras have truly been a blessing, and it shows both victimizations. It shows when police are victims, and it also shows when the community has been mistreated. It shows victimization on both ends. It tells a story. My mother used to say that there's two sides to every story, and then somewhere in the middle is the truth. Well, the body-worn camera is the middle. It's the truth. You can't dispute it. And so what we do is we look at when we get a complaint, we don't randomize it. That's a union negotiated issue. We are required by state law now, but before the state mandated it, we still, we had a policy, and we had a full program, body-worn camera program, that we use when incidents of police misconduct has been brought to our attention. The first thing we do is go to the body-worn cameras, and it's been extremely helpful. And we have identified officers who were problematic. We also identified complaints that had no merit. We identified those complaints that could go either way, and those are complaints I'm most concerned of. The ones that are where the infraction is clear, we take swift and certain action up through termination or criminal prosecution. It's the ones that could go either way are the ones that challenges me the most, and the ones that I'm most concerned of, where the officer could have done some things better. They really didn't cross the threshold of serious misconduct, but they could have been more polite. They could have been more engaging. They could have been more civil. And those are the ones that we are developing, updating our policies around beyond what the state of Maryland requires. So to answer your question, the cameras in Annapolis is truly a blessing. I can't take credit for the body-worn camera program. It was already in place upon my appointment, but I did have experience with body-worn cameras when I was the Inspector General in the Baltimore Police Department, because of course they're under consent decree. And we have a use of force assessment team and the body-worn cameras. And I like to have that in Annapolis, by the way. I could talk about that a little bit if I have time, whereby we look at camera footage to identify gaps in our training. We look at it to identify what we could do better. So that's something that I have to negotiate. But in terms of our internal investigation, I think it's enhanced our ability to arrive at the truth in ways you couldn't imagine. And it's also helped officers when complaints were frivolous or complaints were untrue, when they were unfounded. It support the officers' version of events. So it's worked both ways. I think we're at a place now where officers really appreciate turning on body-worn cameras. And I'll say this one last thing before we move on. When I first got there, I was reading disciplinary recommendations because officers were forgetting to turn their cameras on. You never see it now. Officers are automatically turning the cameras on now. You don't have to tell them or warn them or remind them that they have to turn the cameras on and take the appropriate action. It's automatic now.
Can I ask you a really quick, how have, as a Black man, you know, I see the body camera footage from various places, and, you know, it feels a lot like the lynching photographs that used to be passed around. When, you know, we watching the lynchings over and over again. I stopped watching these videos after Walter Scott was killed. And, you know, after he was shot in the back by Detective Slager down in South Carolina, I stopped watching all of these videos. And I wonder, you know, I couldn't watch George Floyd. I couldn't watch any of them. Even though these were cell phone camera videos, they weren't body camera videos. You know, how do you account for the psychological effect on Black people that these videos are having, you know, constantly? And I'm sure they'll be coming out, once they come out from Anne Arundel County, they'll also have an effect here. So how do we account for the psychological effect amongst the Black community, especially in regards to these videos of, you know, police in custody killings and or deaths in custody, or and you know, in those exigent circumstances as well? How do you feel like we should account for the mental health of the African American community in regards to that, as the chiefs of police? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, well, one thing it's affirming. You know, you go back at during the early part of the Jim Crow era, all the way up to the 1960s, Black people have been complaining about excessive force, unnecessary force, and police brutality for decades. I'm talking
now everybody can see it.
And now everybody can see it. So what it does, it's validation that these complaints are not frivolous. I don't think most people who are enlightened and know the history of America and the history of law enforcement, especially in the southern part of the United States, disagree with that. But now you have physical evidence, you know, beyond CBS News or NBC or ABC News when photojournalists are covering events. Now you see it in everyday encounters with the police. And I'm thank the good Lord up above that we haven't had those horrible videos in Anne Arundel County in the city of Annapolis. But to watch George Floyd's video, it was painful. It was painful to Black people. It was painful for Black officers, African American or Black officers. It was very painful. It was painful. Eric Gardner, I remember that. I said over a pack of cigarettes, the chokehold. And I remember watching that video. I remember watching some of the videos in Baltimore City. I remember watching the videos, Walter Scott. I mean, he also actually stood in a isosceles stance like he was at the range. And when Walter Scott was running, he had time to align the sights of a gun up, you know, to align the front and the rear sights together and take a point of aim and fire that shot and shoot Mr. Scott in the back. That was one of the hardest ones that I've watched.
Based on a traffic stop.
Based on a traffic stop. I remember in South Carolina, an officer pulled over a young man at a gas station. The young man literally, and the video reveals this. It's not Ed Jackson's opinion. The video revealed this. He did everything that the officer asked him to do, and he still got shot. So those are hard to watch. But I would argue, and the viewers could disagree with me, those are still, believe it or not, there's 581,000 police officers estimated in the United States, over 17,000 agencies. As horrible as those videos are, as unjust as they are, as brutal as they are, that's not a reflection of the profession in its entirety. Don't get me wrong, and I want people to be very careful to hear what I'm saying. I'm not saying that justifies anything. What I am saying is that thank God that most men and women who put the uniform on don't subscribe to that mentality. But you're right. I'll say the last thing that we both have Chief Awad has, she presides over the crisis intervention and crisis response team. And we always telling citizens now, and we are kind of like, we partner with them. And we are telling citizens constantly when they have encounters, police encounters, or even non-police encounters that of a traumatic nature that could potentially invoke triggers, emotional, psychological triggers, then we provide clinical services. That's another thing that we could talk about probably in a whole separate forum, is how we are reaching out to trauma. Police are dealing with trauma in the community and amongst each other. So there's a lot of things that we're either doing or we will be doing centered around body-worn camera footage and the trauma that's associated with it.
And if I may just chime in, we're excited about the implementation of our body-worn camera program for every reason that he outlined. It tells a story, a perspective, not the entire story, obviously, but it brings together the story. And then in terms of these disturbing videos where we've literally seen people killed right before our eyes, they're very disturbing for all of us. It breaks our hearts too. We're human, like I said, and I'm an African-American woman. I have family, you know, and it took me a couple of days to actually watch the murder of George Floyd right before our eyes. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing in that moment. And like everyone else, you know, it had its impact on me as well. And it had its impact on our officers, our African-American brothers and sisters within public safety, and they've been vocal about it. And we've committed to getting them additional help to help them have conversations internally, to talk about how they feel, how they felt in that moment, how they felt prior to that moment. It's a priority for us, and we've made arrangements to bring in professionals to help our officers navigate, particularly our minority officers navigate through that trauma. And if I can make one recommendation to community, just as we train on crisis intervention and mental health first aid, I would encourage community ambassadors to take that certification course as well, the mental health first aid, because you don't have to rely on the police and our crisis intervention teams to come in and help you just sit down and have a conversation. If you receive the training, there's no harm in having community ambassadors provide that service for community members who feel comfortable talking to a neighbor or a friend.
Is someone from the Department of Health available that's outside of the police department to be able to help with that?
There are all kinds of nonprofits. In fact, Johns Hopkins University provides a psychological first aid training, and it's free. So all you have to do is know where the resources are to go to and get the help. I mean, it's a basic 8-hour course of instruction. And it may occur, you know, they may break the blocks down, but still it provides, you know, community members with the opportunity to educate, enlighten, and also help others. And that's
the
why
other question I have is that, you know, you all clearly called out the two sides of this conversation, where Black people see one thing and, you know, white community may see another. And how do you negotiate the relationship that we're having right now? We have a group of people who, from my perspective, have been severely radicalized and are turning into political violence. And, you know, I'm trying to understand how we address, you know, somebody said brainwashing earlier, but, you know, just the dichotomy, the two sides that we're seeing going on. Some people will say Black people are being brainwashed by the media. I believe I watched the school board meeting where that was said by one of the officers. He said that when you were introducing it was the perception of the police that Black people had, which was the problem. And, you know, I can't necessarily, it caught my ear because it wasn't just, and the sheriff had actually said to me before that I was explaining data to him, and he said, I know it's an emotional issue. We were talking about the warrant intercept program, where, Black people basically are paying for law enforcement through their taxes. And so, their tax compensation. And so just, it's a lot of victim blaming. And then at the same time, I'm trying to understand how you, as police chiefs who see these disparities and witness the conversation going on, feel as though we should better negotiate our communities because we're very segregated. This is all about segregation. And how do we negotiate that?
We got to have the conversations. So if the officer said that, I know that I've shared with them just through training, we've experienced various trainings outside of the police department through academia. And one of the questions that was posed to our group during one of the sessions was, where is the perception of policing shaped? Where do most people gain their perspective? And the most popular response was the media, and that's untrue. It's based on each individual's contact or experience with a police officer. And then that loved one shares their story with the loved one. So it's our intent to make sure that, we're not perfect, we're human, we make mistakes. And sometimes we drop the ball and we hold ourselves accountable. But it's important to have the conversations. And we've begun that internally with our officers, having the conversation. When I was sworn in, I said, we're going to have conversations about race, equity, diversity, inclusion, what that means, how it impacts all of us. And we're beginning those conversations internally. But there also has to be a community piece as well. There has to be dialogue between members of the community. And that's something that not necessarily the police have to step into, but it has to be the right trained professionals to facilitate those conversations. We're doing it internally, but I believe it needs to trickle outward. So we're working with our officers to make sure, we hear one another's perspective, so we gain understanding and clarity from one another, not only, the historical context, but also just being able to relate to us, to relate to one another, share empathy amongst one another. And that, to me, we improve ourselves internally. That is gonna, it's gonna trickle out into how we serve our residents.
Thank you so much.
Often remind our officers, our primary purpose is service. We took the oath of office to uphold the laws of the state and the Constitution, but we also say we want to help people. So we need to help people.
Thank you. Chief Jackson, did you want to respond? I'm gonna let you respond in, I have to ask some questions from the audience, I'm sorry. We have one question. I had to scroll back up to ask Chief Jackson. I think there was a question about, or I think it was actually the Chief Awad, in regards to low-level crimes. What are our current stats on low-level crimes, and how are we addressing some of them for the future? Because 2021 is a different situation than 2020.
So when you're talking about the lower level offenses, we are enforcing the law. Now, with the marijuana law, obviously anything 10 grams or less, I mean, it's as simple as a civil citation. However, when we look at some of the disparity or the disparate number of young minority children who've been arrested in the school system, we launched our Fresh Start program under Ms. Tamika Perkins. It's a phenomenal program, very forward thinking. It's a pre-arrest diversion program. So when we routine children in the school system who've committed some type of lower level offense, rather than arrest them, we transition them into this program. Ms. Tamika Perkins works with them, the family, to get them, point them in the right direction for resources to help shape the behavior, change the behavior so that kids are making better decisions.
We did have a question about, I'm sorry, we did have a question about the SROs as well in regards to assessing the purpose, effectiveness, and psychological effects of SROs being deployed in Anne Arundel County public schools. That's a long question, and I know it's something that we definitely need to have a discussion on in a future meeting. And so, do you want to answer that really briefly, or? We can
talk about it at length in another session. I have Major Plitt on here. He oversees our SRO program, but I talk to them too. I've had an opportunity to get out and talk. We have almost 800 officers. Obviously, I haven't talked to everyone, but the command staff's done a great job at trying to, get me FaceTime with all of our officers. It's a bit of a challenge because, I'm everywhere, but having the conversations with our school resource officers and, hearing their passion, their commitment and their understanding of it's all about relationships. It's not necessarily about using the hammer or the stick. It's using the carrot. And they understand there are days where kids have bad days. And rather than, put that full court press on a child, they give them their space to let them process whatever it is that they're going through. And then they deal with whatever the issue is as a follow-up later on. But our SROs aren't in school yes, we're law enforcement officers. Yes, we're there to safeguard, to make sure no one comes onto the campus with weapons to harm any of our kids, et cetera. But we're not enforcing administrative processes or anything like that a school administrator should handle. And again, if there's a lower level offense, that child is diverted directly to Ms. Tamika Perkins in that program, Fresh Start.
Thank you. Give you guys basically 2 minutes each to give your final statements. Chief Jackson, you did say age before beauty, Chief Howard. So I don't disagree with. I don't agree with that. I should say I don't agree with that. But I do see Chief Jackson smile and it's engaging.
Well, yeah, she's better looking than me. I'll submit to that. And she's very smart too, very bright. But look, with these forums, I get frustrated because and hear me out. I'll take this 2 minutes. I get frustrated because there's never enough time to really capture the essence of the true problem that we're experiencing. Number one, I'll just take this time to say that a large part of my administration is taking a social approach to all of this. You can't have any one group of citizens in any way in the world, but we're talking about the United States. And when you talk about policing and be subjugated the way that they've been subjugated, to be oppressed the way they've been oppressed, underserved the way they've been underserved, and then expect them to be in compliance with the dominant values of American society. So you said a very compelling question, Mr. Wiley, earlier that I would love to just lecture on that in its entirety. My whole approach to law enforcement now, the new paradigm, 21st century policing, is officer wellness, technology, and all those things. But one thing that America needs to confront is the disparity, not only in criminal justice, but economic justice, justice in housing, affordable education. Because in most of the communities that are inhabited primarily of people of color, what's happened is, you said, blame the victim. That's what's been happening. Our government has really blamed the victim. You can't have drug addiction, abject or hopeless poverty, poor housing, poor schools, curriculums that are irrelevant, lack of rite of passage to young men. Many of them don't have fathers. In the real world, we would like them to have fathers to help them transition into manhood. When you have all those things, mental illness that goes unaddressed, operating in any one community, you're going to have crime and social disorganization. What's unfair about that, you send untrained police officers, our government sends untrained police officers who are not psychotherapists, who are not sociologists or psychologists in to regulate the behavior. Then it goes bad, you blame the institution of law enforcement. What has to happen if we're going to really realize any real meaningful change, and I'm still talking about law enforcement, then those other issues have to be addressed. We have to address the disparity in the Black economy. We have to talk about white privilege and confront that, how our children don't get the same opportunities to start off early in life. And then we house them in these neighborhoods and these communities with everything going against them, and then expect them to be in compliance with the dominant values and to behave. And
Yes.
That's the unfair part about it. So I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna get off my high horse. But I always take the opportunity to say that. And so when people tell me about Black people's behavior and why Black men commit so many crimes, it's not that. You all, and I say you all, our government, you all, and I purposely say you all for effect. You all are just the government, our policies at the highest level of the American government has put systems in place. And many of our young men and women are doomed to fail from the time they come into their communities.
Thank you.
And I piggyback on what he said, and I'm gonna be quick: education, economics, employment, all the root causes. Until we address the root causes, it's still, the police are the first visible form of government, and we're called in for everything to solve these problems. And these are social issues beyond our expertise. And we really need a holistic approach, get everyone engaged, get everyone involved. Entire point in creating our Community Services Bureau so that we can bring people together to address real areas in communities that are distressed, that have issues. We'll do our part to help where we can, but it's on all of us, not just the police department.
Amen, amen. And it's not always about race, but race is definitely the primary motivation that we see in a lot of these situations, especially when it comes to policing. I did want to say that, we have a lot of class issues in Anne Arundel County that relate to the issues that went on that were exacerbated by the pandemic. And so I think that the pandemic brought out a lot for us. And I really appreciate you all taking the time, everyone on this call, to meet with us and have this discussion. We got to talk a lot of different things, and I hope that we can do it again. I'm very, 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 very inspired by what it is that you all have said today. And I hope that, others have taken it into consideration in their budgeting process, where you hear about all these other issues that need money and you want to include your funds into it. Talk about, I think that the housing in Anne Arundel County is going to be helped a lot, especially with this federal money that we have coming down. So we definitely, need to see an improvement on that. And I hope that some of our state delegates can realize that we need low-income housing built for people that they aren't suffering under it. I just want to transfer, I guess, to Monique and let Monique, my fellow NAACP member, move forward with the ending of the event. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and to everyone else. Wow, this was a much needed conversation. Thank you for everyone for participating. I think one of the things that stood out to me was when you all talked about policing people from the heart. And I know that resonated with a lot of people because I saw all the messages in our chat. And I think a lot of times when we have this conversation about police reform, that's one of the messages that gets lost in that discussion. So it was nice to hear you all talk about that tonight. And I know that's at the core of what you all believe when you talk about community policing. So thank you all again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for having us. And if I may, just one more thing. We welcome you, myself and Chief Jackson. Get to know us. Come see our police departments. We have citizen police academies. We have youth police academies. We have ride-along programs. Come see us. Come see what we do. Get to know us so you can see firsthand who we are.
Okay. So I had a couple of other people that I wanted to thank. I wanted to thank our audience for tuning in tonight and participating with us. Also, again, thank you to Chief Ed Jackson and Chief Amal Awad for joining us today and helping to shed some light on the police reform topics that we discussed. I know that it's a lot of information for our audience to digest, so we do appreciate you all providing us with some more insight into these different topics. And I also wanted to thank you both for your commitment to the residents of Anne Arundel County and to your openness and willingness to incorporate those police reform changes into your department and reflect them in your department. Also, I would like to extend a warm thank you to our co-organizers for the event, as well as to our moderators, Dr. Sean Ashworth and to Mr. Stephen Waddy. Again, our co-organizers for the event have been the Anne Arundel County chapter of the NAACP, the National Coalition of 100 Black Women of Anne Arundel County, the Arundel Bay Area chapter of Jack and Jill of America, the Northern Arundel Alumni chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, the Rho Eta Zeta chapter of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority, the Lambda Delta Sigma Alumni chapter of Sigma Gamma Rho Sorority, and the Delta Pi Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority. I know that I've been incredibly happy to be a part of this collaborative effort to increase the engagement of African Americans in the Anne Arundel County community. So we actually have a brief survey that we would like for you all to complete at your earliest convenience. I'm just going to share the slide on my screen. Also, the survey will be placed in our Facebook chat as well as our Zoom chat. When you get a chance, please complete it. Your feedback is very valuable to us, and it will also help us in planning future events. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and good night. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.